I'm Russell Faucette with the Stern team at Omada Real Estate, and today I am again with Mandi Henriod of Wise Home Lending, and we're going to talk about some of the first questions that we get asked when a buyer is coming in, and that's how much home can I buy? What do my payments look like? What can I afford? And so let's start just with the general formula of what percent of my income can go towards my payment, or what does that look like?
How do you calculate it yourself, right? So whatever your gross income is, keep in mind that lenders are working off of gross income. That means before taxes, before your insurance, before your 401k contributions. So gross income, you can go to 46% of your gross income towards a housing payment. Now, that housing payment has to include property taxes, mortgage insurance, homeowner's insurance, and an HOA if you are buying a property that has an HOA. Okay? Secondarily to that is your total debt structure. So your house has to fit into that first bucket, but then the second rule to that is that all of your expenses or bills that show up on credit, including your housing, you have to keep that, depending on your credit, in the 53 to 56% of your gross income limitation. That's an FHA guideline, so they let you go up that high, assuming you have 660 credit scores or higher, okay? So that means that any car payments, student loan payments, credit cards, things like that, plus your house has to fit into, say, 53% of your gross income.
Okay, so let's break it down a little bit, and we'll do round numbers here. So let's say as a household, either myself individually or between myself and spouse, we make $80,000 a year.
Yeah. So if you make $80,000 a year, you divide that out by 12, and you take 46% of that number, it means that you can have a mortgage payment up to $3,000. Again, that has to include all the pieces, taxes, insurance, all of it, right? And then your total debt structure, car payments, student loans, all those things have to fit in at $3,500 a month.
Okay, and so if I'm going to pay $3,000 a month, and we're making some assumptions here, roughly what mortgage? So let's assume I don't know what's today's rate. 7?
I'm using 6%,
okay,
because
6%.
I'm running these numbers on FHA today.
Okay, so FHA today is 6%. That's amazing.
It is amazing. Rates are actually pretty good.
That's come down. I mean, that's kind of the magic number people have been talking about. Of once it gets to 6%, like, we're good again. As far as a good mortgage.
Again, we keep talking about this. It's a healthy market, right?
Okay, so 6%. So running to get that 3,000, roughly, what am I looking for as far as the loan amount?
So, or purchase price, which I think is the thing that everybody can relate to a little more, is if you have $80,000 in the household and you have $3,000 to work with, that's roughly a $420,000 purchase.
Okay. So that is definitely entry-level home.
Yes, and that's me calculating in taxes, insurance, and mortgage insurance. The only thing I'm not calculating in that is an HOA. So if you're looking at properties that have HOAs, you probably need to dial that back by about $30,000.
Okay. So if I want to get closer to what the median price is, let's just jump up to that $500,000.
Sure.
What does my household income need to look like?
So if you want to purchase a home for $500,000, you need closer to $100,000 in household income to get that payment, which is closer to $3,500 a month.
And the assumption is that I only have $500 of like a car payment or credit card payments, things like that.
Right. And that's something that we should talk about. One of the things that we run into a lot is when we ask our clients, what do you have as far as debts out there? And we ask about cars and all these things. People often don't take into account their student loans, because many of our clients, your student loans are deferred or they're in forbearance or something along those lines. So something important to know is that on the lending side, we have to treat it as if there are payments on those, whether you have a payment or not. The idea being, if you're going into a 30-year mortgage, at some point in that 30 years, that student loan is likely to go into repayment. So we're going to be required to count calculations on that. The most aggressive version, and it depends on your loan program, but the most aggressive calculation you will find is 0.5% of your loan balance as a monthly payment. So that's something important to keep in mind. If you are at home doing this and trying to figure out what you can afford, don't leave your student loans out.
Okay, and then let's talk about roughly what is my $500 car payment costing me in affordability. So meaning if I got rid of the $500 car payment or $500 credit card payment, like how much more home could I buy if I eliminated that debt?
Yeah, that actually works out to be a really easy answer in light of the things that we've just discussed. Because if at $80,000 you could have a $3,000 mortgage payment, and $100,000 you could have a $3,500 payment, right? That's a $500 shift, $80,000 in buying power for $500, because the payment at $500,000 is basically $3,500.
Okay.
So that $500 in a car payment is a big deal.
So it's by being able to shift $500 from a car or let's just say consumer debt over to a mortgage, I actually could go in and buy another $100,000.
Roughly. Yeah, roughly.
Okay. And then
because keep in mind, say you can qualify for a $3,000 mortgage payment, right? But your total debt has to be under $3,500. If you have a car payment for $500, you have a credit card for another $200, right there you've started to pull back what you can have as a mortgage. Right now we're down to $2,800 for a mortgage. And then you say you have a student loan payment for another $150, right? You chip away at your buying power based on your debt structure, because that will still override that initial calculation.
Okay. And then here's another one that I'm seeing a little bit is people get, starting to creep towards maybe that maximum payment, right? But let's say they're under, because honestly, if you're making $80,000 a year and you are spending a full $3,000 on your loan, sometimes that might feel like, oh, that's more than I'm paying in rent. And so, they're trying to buy maybe so their payment's only $2,000. But what I've seen is sometimes a buyer will get stuck on a price of a house and they're like, I want the seller to come down, right, another 20 grand or 10 grand. Help me understand, if you know the math on this, of what does an extra 10,000? So let's say I need to pay $510 instead of $500,000. So I'm not talking about the big swings. I never want people to go, completely house poor. But sometimes I think we find a house that meets our criteria, but because we had a number stuck in our head, we might let that house go. And so $10,000 to a seller today is a lot of money, and sometimes they get to the point they're not budging. But maybe as a buyer, if you could spend another $5,000 or $10,000 to get the house that you wanted, how much a month is that roughly going to cost me?
It's less than $100 a month. It's about $70 a month.
Okay.
In round numbers, that would shift your payment.
For $10,000.
For $10,000 in buying power.
Okay. So could we say if I wanted to, it was just a matter of $5,000 in that loan, are we safe to say are about $35? I mean, half that?
Yes.
Okay. So if I skipped eating out 4 times a month, or
going to Starbucks if you're me, right, at $8 a pop.
Or taking my family to McDonald's
right.
once.
Right. I have this conversation all the time with clients. If you truly look at your budget and you had to determine the house I love versus the couple of trips to McDonald's, or, my family loves sushi, so we make sushi instead of going out to sushi, right? Because going out to sushi as a family of 4 is really expensive. But making it, I can feed 20 people for a fraction of the cost. Right? So I do encourage clients to really think that through. Like, what are you foregoing on an investment for the short term, right? Like, are we giving up what we want in the big picture for something that really isn't as important as
Right.
we feel.
And I think as you look at buying a home, and today's prices definitely they can feel unaffordable. But as we look into our lifestyles, and small tweaks to our lifestyles can actually mean that we can get into that home ownership where we start building that long-term wealth. And so, we talked about, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, one of the things I've run into is like for my first time home buyers, when I talk to them, 90 days later, 6 months later, and they've made that initial stretch to get into a home, is they buy something they love, they're no longer eating out every night.
Yeah.
Right? Where their money goes changes because they love their space. I think there's something to be said for that.
Yep. And so you've ran some numbers for us on the spot here. If I wanted to be able to figure it out myself, where could I go, or what resources do you have available so that someone could actually go put some numbers in and get a rough estimate before reaching out?
Yeah. So if you go to wisehomelending.com, to our website, there actually is a mortgage calculator on there. We have specifically picked it because it has a very solid estimate for things like mortgage insurance and taxes. So feel free to jump on that site and run some numbers of your own.
And if I'm early on, do I have to wait till I find a home or I'm ready to buy before I talk with you?
No, in fact, we suggest you don't. My very favorite clients are the ones that are talking to me 6 months ahead of the game, because if you take the time to do strategy with us on the front end, we can help you with all sorts of things. Not only can we put you at peace with your budget, get your numbers right, we can also take a look. We don't even do a full credit pull for most purposes unless you already have a property in mind. If you are just doing the research, we're doing a soft pull. It has no impact on your credit, but what it does do is it gives us a glimpse into your credit profile, and we can give you advice like, hey, pay this credit card down to here and your score is going to go up by X amount, and that's going to improve your rate by 1/4 of a point, right? Those credit scores are really important. So we love clients who are thinking ahead, even the clients who call me and say, I think I want to buy a year from now. We are happy to have that conversation. We're happy to put numbers together, because the more you know, the more power you have to make plans.
Yep. And it's a big purchase. This is a very large investment. And so, we hope that we can help educate you well in advance. I mean, a year in advance of we've got to shift some of these lifestyle things. But if we do that, we're going to be able to get you into a home,
And a piece of advice I give a lot of my first-time home buyers when they're just in that beginning stage and they're kind of doing research and they're trying to figure out how scary the payment is, I say, okay, if you are thinking about a $3,000 mortgage, and that sounds terrifying, and you pay $2,200 right now in rent, I want you to put $800 into a savings account every month and don't touch it, and see what that feels like in your budget, right? Adjust your spending before you're in the position where you have the mortgage.
Yeah, that is awesome advice. Okay, well, that's what we have for you today. Another, here with Mandi from Wise Home Lending. If you have any questions, even if you're not in the market right now, feel free, reach out to us so we can help you towards buying your dream home.